Sharon and I are going to work together. She has a large PowerPoint with her, and we'll go through that together. But one of the things that I'm really passionate about is urban wildcrafting. I also do a community garden for the homeless in Courtney. But one of my favorite things is having hedgerows. And as a Métis person, I'm Métis, and we're always traveling. So we always had to figure out what we could eat and new things. And I think the most important thing is education, but it's a sense of curiosity. If you really want to know local food, look right underneath it. Do one plant a week. Like, just notice. It's really, really important. And because we don't have real territory, it's sort of all our territory. And I think it's really like somebody previously said, well, if you get things out in the wild, they're cleaner and all that. Well, they're not necessarily. Fire retardants are spilt on fire areas. There's a lot to do with it. Plus, we can't all drive out into the wilderness. And just by driving there, we're changing that habitat just by our exhaust and everything. So I think when you're wildcrafting, there's some things that are a given. You want to know where you are and look for obvious sources of pollution. But if you wildcraft in your own backyard and your own block, then you know. And so one of the things is scouting beforehand, walking around your neighborhood, getting to know your neighbors from spring onward. Even in your own garden, there's lots to eat, and I will show you as I go through this. Now, what I have also over here is later on, if you want to try it, there's Oregon grape and blackberry cordial. Now, I make that by, if you're urban wildcrafting, you're not going to get a lot of berries. In my own yard, though, I do have thimbleberries and salmon berries and blackberries and all kinds of things. But what I do is when I'm going for a walk, I just get a few berries at a time. I prepare a jar with apple cider vinegar in it. And apple cider vinegar is great for making tinctures and all kinds of things, and it extracts the goodness out of plants without destroying it. So you still have your vitamin C and everything like that in it. So I pick a handful of whatever kind of berries I find, thimbleberries, throw them in the jar, smash them up, and leave them in a cool place. And when I get some other berries, I smash them up, and I just keep doing that till I get about a third of the jar full of berries or more. Depends how many jars I have and what I'm doing. And just let them sit. Stir them every once in a while. And then I say on a rainy day, which doesn't mean on a rainy day, it means when you have time. Heat them up a little bit, but not to the point of them boiling, and strain it. And then you can add honey or sugar to taste, and you can use it actually as an amazing vinaigrette in salads. It's just incredible. Or as a concentrate like that, it is really good as Kool-Aid or things for your kids. If you want to put hot water in it, it's really good. Now, this is a little vinegary. I didn't put tons and tons of sugar in it, but as you all know, probably apple cider vinegar is very good for you too. So it's a really easy way of dealing with berries and not having to fire up the canning kitchen and all that other stuff on a hot summer day. So I do that with all kinds of berries. My favorite is raspberry, though, I have to admit. Just raspberry in vinegar and then making the cordial is, but I didn't bring any. So the other thing I have on the table that you can see later is I like preserving things in honey also. I make, over on the table, and unfortunately it's not open for tasting, but I just thought I'd show you, is fir tips or any kind of evergreen tips, usually fir, in honey. And then again, you just smash up your clean product, add the honey. I like to keep it in a window because I believe that the sun just adds something. Turn it over every once in a while, and you can leave it for a long time. They make great cough syrups because the honey extracts things, but most people don't know that honey has antibacterial qualities. It is really good for gram-negative bacteria, which is the one that causes a lot of problems. I also have on the table, this is with wild ginger. Now, I don't think people should harvest wild ginger as a rule. I have been harvesting the same patch for over 30 years, and you have to be really careful because it's a slow-growing plant, and you want to get it about the time it's flowering. That's when it has the most resistance to picking. But like I said, I only harvest from this patch every 2 or 3 years, and it's way out in the wilderness. And every May 24th weekend, I go to the same patch in the North Okanagan. I harvest ginger, I harvest fir buds, and I harvest arnica. And that's the thing, if you have a place that you can go to, over the years you develop a relationship with it. You know what's going on there. And that's even just as important eating you as food, as far as I'm. With frozen berries? Oh, you can use any berries and they can be frozen. I've done that before. I've thrown things in the freezer. I even one time did it with dried berries. And that was interesting because they plumped up in the cider. And also, I'm sort of going off track, but I hope you don't mind. Apple cider is good for making tinctures. You don't need to use alcohol to make tinctures. In fact, I prefer apple cider vinegar for tinctures. But we're supposed to talk about food, not taste better. Yeah, I think it tastes better, and just the apple cider is good for you. So, like I said, I have rose petal jam. As an urban wildcrafter, I don't just use indigenous plants. You look and see what's there. So in the spring, these are from my yard actually. I have hedgerows everywhere. You'll see some pictures of it. Those are my roses. They're not a native rose. They're a very beautiful smelling rose that blooms only in the spring. It's really easy to make rose petal jam, and it's probably one of the most fabulous things to do, especially with smelling roses, because it feeds your soul while you're making it, because you gather the roses, and I found out the easy way is to just grab it like this and pull them. You have to take the little white parts off because they're very bitter, and chop it up really fine, and for every 2 cups of roses you will use 2 cups of sugar or sugar-like thing. But I only use 1 cup for the 2 cups at first. Mix it all up and put it in a cool place overnight, and it'll liquefy. It'll draw those perfumes into the sugar. So while you're cutting them up and stuff, you get to smell these lovely roses. Then you add some lemon juice, usually 1 lemon's worth of lemon juice. Add the other cup and heat it to make jam, and it turns into jam quite soon. It's very bulky, but while you're heating it, you get that smell of roses again. And it is so full of vitamins, and it's such a wonderful thing for your soul. Now, don't get discouraged because you don't get very much jam out of a lot of rose petals, but it's worth it. I just make it in these little jars because it's a treat. It's not something you're going to eat every day. If you do, you'll run out. And like I said, I'll show the slides in a minute. I just want to do a hands-on thing first. Now, these are all the jams that I've made from my area. And this one here is Oregon grape jam. Bill was talking about it before. Oregon grape, you can make jelly out of Oregon grape. It's really horrible tasting off the plant, but you can grow that in your yard easy. It's one of those plants that you don't even have to look after. They don't hit bugs very often. They're great as a security thing in a hedgerow because it keeps animals and other people out. And to do Oregon grape, you need to have a food mill. I prefer jams over jellies because it has more substance. So what I do is I cook the Oregon grape with just a little water, and I smash them up while I'm cooking them. And then I get a food mill, or if you don't have one, you can get a strainer that's like a cone strainer or whatever you have, and push the pulp through, because it's got a lot of seeds, but the pulp is what gives it the most amazing flavor. And you don't need pectin with Oregon grape, which is very good. It's got its own pectin in it. And so I just, sometimes I'll add a little lemon juice, I don't know why, because it's my thing, and sugar, and a little bit of water. It's super easy to make. I try to not ever go over 1-to-1. And it's more like tasting. You know, you can taste it. I like, this is a little tart, but it's really full of flavor. I also have, this is seedless blackberry. A lot of people don't like blackberry. I really recommend you get a fruit mill. It's a little thing that you just crank, and there's different screens on the bottom, and it'll take all the seeds out of the blackberry, and it's really way better. This here is wild blueberry, or the evergreen blueberry. It grows up in mountains and stuff, but I grow it in my yard. It stays evergreen, but it turns kind of red in the fall lots of times. And it makes them, it's my favorite. This and Oregon grape are my favorite. And it's a no-brainer plant if you have a dry place, hot and dry. They're fine for that. They don't like waterloggedness. So if you have a place that drains well, that's where you plant this. People think because it's a blueberry it needs a lot of water. The evergreen doesn't. In fact, it kind of resents having a lot of water. And this one is salal. And salal can taste a little, you know, people say it's tasteless. Well, it isn't actually. You should taste from various trees. It really does take something from the ground where it is. And some years, like last year was a crazy Oregon grape year. Crazy. There were so many. This year, not so much. But this year, there were more salal. So, and the salal, traditionally, it's really easy to work with salal because they dry really well. So you can make fruit leather or dry them, boom, really easy. Just let them dry and compound them a little bit. Press them together. When you make jam, some people add blackberries to the salal. This doesn't have blackberries in it. Sometimes people will want, they sort of taste almondly, so I sometimes add a little bit of almond extract just to bring up its flavor. It's absolutely wonderful, and it's a little bit seedy. You can do the same thing, but you won't get most of the seeds out of it, believe me. They're tiny little seeds. Is there any questions right now? Yes, Deb. Yes, it's wonderful. So I really would like people to try it when they have time. Now, this here is when I was saying about curiosity. I didn't bring it in, but I was helping a friend dig her garden, and I know she doesn't use pesticides, and I know she doesn't use a lot of things, and her garden is raised. And we were digging out peonies, and there were these peony roots, and then we were digging out daylilies. Well, food is everywhere. Daylilies, you can eat the whole thing of daylilies. Most of you, if you haven't tasted a daylily bud, they're like a cross between asparagus and a pea. They are so good. In fact, I have to, my daughter, when she was little, I had to be careful, so I got some flowers because she just ate them all the time. You can stuff the daylily flowers and use them, or even use them as cups to put different salads and stuff in. Same with tulips, actually, if you grow them. They make wonderful little dessert cups and things. It's about, like I said, it's about curiosity and finding out. Like with the peony roots, I looked at them and I went, So I looked it up, and it's a very good medicine. And so I'm drying them, and I'm going to wait a while till I feel capable of doing that. The daylily roots, they're tuberous, and how do you say alastomeria? Am I saying it right? Astomeria? That plant that the false tiger lily they sell everywhere, those are also called Peruvian lilies. And the Peruvian lily, the roots are sold in indigenous markets in Chile all the time. With most roots, you want to roast them for a while because that breaks down the sugars, the inulin in like Jerusalem artichokes that can actually give you gastric gas, actually, and diarrhea if you don't. But most of those things are done that way. Before I go on with this presentation, mushrooms. People ask me about mushrooms all the time. Mushrooms are really tricky. I've been eating mushrooms for years, but they change their look in different areas. So when you're moving to a different area, I recommend that you do a spore print. I don't know how many of you have ever seen a spore print, but there's one here for you to look at. I've done a spore print. What you do is you cut the top off the mushroom and you put it on a white piece of paper. If you have two, it's good to put on a white piece of paper and a dark piece of paper because some spore prints are white and some are dark. So if you have enough, it's good to do both. It's okay.
You can do half white and half black.
Oh, brilliant. Never thought of that one. So, there's only one other plant there's two things I want to talk about before we go into this. And that is my friend Paula here? She's in the other room. A lot of things that are wildcrafted are actually endangered. We talked about that earlier this morning. You can grow a lot of things. This isn't a food, but this is sweetgrass. You can grow your own sweetgrass. It's endangered in some of its normal habitat. It grows fine. I grow it in my yard. Paula grows it at her house for ceremonial purposes. And it's actually kind of nice because it's your medicine then. And also, this here is white sage or buffalo sage. It's not garden sage. And Paula grows this, which is very endangered in its own habitat. She grows it in the Comox Valley in a very dry area and in her greenhouse, and it's amazing. And that's one way of protecting species in the wild. Sharon's going to help me with this next part. I just want to... Now this plant here, I make medicines and food. And this plant here, I just want to show it to you, and I really encourage you to come and look at it later because it is one of the most profound medicine plants I've discovered in the last few years. It's called Grindella or gumweed, and it grows in dry areas by the beach. Because it's cold, you can't feel the gumminess so much. The buds get a white latex on them and very sticky. This plant is a lifesaver for asthma and bronchitis. That's what it was traditionally used for. Now, I like topical things better than ingesting things because I'm always scared, well, what if it's wrong? So the first time I used this, I infused it in honey. I Googled it, I checked everything out, and I thought, oh, sounds good. And I used it on myself. I'm a smoker, and I had wheezing. And it's an expectorant too. It was amazing the first time I took it because I never knew what it felt like to get air to the bottom of my lungs for a long time. My daughter got post-viral asthma, and she was on 2 puffers, hadn't slept for a week because Ventolin has so much steroids and stuff in it, and adrenaline. She just was like, and she took it for 3 days, and she hasn't, I don't know if it's a coincidence, but that first night she slept for 14 hours, and she hasn't had post-viral asthma since. Whenever she starts getting a little congested, she takes some. Now, I originally made this in honey, but what I found is it works really good in apple cider vinegar. And so, and if you're going on the beach, and you just take the bud part, the sticky bud part, you'll see it's got a white latex, like a white sticky thing. That's the part you want. It says, or when it's just starting to open. Some people get the whole thing, and if you go to a herb store, sometimes they'll use the whole plant. It's just not the same. And because you want respect, like whenever I pick anything, I always say thank you when I'm picking. And even with the buds, I will only pick 1 out of every 4 buds. That's just because I think somebody else might come behind me that needs it, like another human or an animal. And what I also do is when there's seed heads that are already done, I scatter them. where areas where it needs to be, because of development and everything, it's not where it used to be. And it's a totally, I'm just really grateful for this plant. I know it's helped a lot of people, and it's something you can do yourself. And I think that's really important to know what. And the other thing is, as a general guideline, if you're getting roots, you want to get the roots in the spring or in the fall. Just a second. In the fall, it has, if it's a biannual plant, like a plant that has 2 years. So a lot of the thistles and dandelions and things, they're perennials or biannuals. If the thistle hasn't bloomed, you can use the thistle root. In the fall, burdock, same thing. Dock is very good for you. A lot of the seeds of these plants are really high in omega-3s. Wild carrot, which is over there, Queen Anne's lace. The seeds from that, you know about this one? If I do saying anything wrong, please interrupt me, because Sharon knows so much. She knows so much about the scientific things too, and the precautions and stuff. But I take the burdock seed and the wild carrot, Queen Anne's lace seed, and sometimes other seed, and I put them in either a coffee grinder sometimes, or I put them in a pepper mill and put them on my salads and stuff, because it's like flaxseed. Burdock seed works really good that way. You want to cook it though. I use it mostly on porridge, because few of my mixtures I was trying to eat on salads, and they were a little bit. Oh, questions. You had a question, Kim? And then you had a question.
What was the name of the plant we talked about before?
This one?
Yes.
Gumweed or Grindella, Grindella. If any of you are online right now, you can. It's really an amazing plant. I've taken it, and I'm the kind of person that I really think that people need to know how to look after themselves. It's better for them if they, even if you don't want to use it right now, to know where it is. And that's what I do. When I'm walking, I'm scouting all the time. I'm going, oh, there's this, there's that. I might not pick it that year, but I know where it is. And if I know where it is, I can protect it. And if someone's gonna, like in my back alley, they were gonna cut down all these Saskatoon bushes and stuff and seal coat them, the alley. And I stopped them because of that. And that's the other thing. Seal coating is one of the most toxic things in the world on dirt roads. So if you pick near a dirt road, be very one that's been seal coated, be very careful. And also try to stop them from seal coating. In 5 states in the United States, they don't allow seal coating at all. The dust from seal coating is one of the most toxic things in your house, they found. So, as I go on here, now I'm not technical. Oh, you had a question.
I was just going to mention Dianne's lace. I think it's a implantation inhibitor. It's
What is?
Dianne's lace.
Yeah.
And so we may not want to take it if you're trying to get pregnant.
Oh. So, yes, if you're pregnant or planning to get pregnant, be careful of anything. Thank you for bringing that up, because a lot of things that are okay in other, I think it has a lot of estrogen, doesn't it, Queen Anne's lace? Because carrots do. Phytos, yeah. So what is it in the Queen Anne's lace, Sharon?
I don't use Queen Anne's lace, so.
Oh, what did you say?
It's an implantation inhibitor.
Oh, an implantation inhibitor. Well, that makes sense. Okay. There's no such thing as phytoestrogen. Okay. Okay, so here we go. This is a fall one. So I don't know if you can see this very well. This is my hedgerow at home. And you can see there's grapes here, and there's blackberries here, and this is a scabby apple. Not all of them are scabby. All around my house, I have put kiwis. I have kiwis. I have hazelnuts. And that's the easiest bang for your buck, is doing hedgerows at your property line. It's wonderful because most things lose their leaves, so you get the light in the winter, but you get the privacy in the summer. Those are rose hips. Now, what I tell people, that's a domestic kind of rose hip that I have in my own yard. And one thing I like to do with these is, everybody makes rose hip jam except me, even though I'm a jam maker. Yes? I don't make rose hip jam because of that, because I one time had like strained it, made the pulp, did all these things, and then tried to get the little hairy parts out, and I still could feel them, and I didn't like the idea of them being there. What I do with rose hips, this is my recipe, I string them. I just get a piece of cotton or organic hemp or whatever and a big needle, and I string them so that they're all on a long string, and I dry them. And I give them away at Christmas, and I hear it say, this is something for your tree, and then you can have a cup of tea. So what you do is you dry, and kids love this, they just dry these long things of rose hips. You can decorate with them, and you hang them up, they dry really well. Because there's just the little hole in there, right? And so what you do is you take the rose hips, you put them in your pot, and then you have to strain loose tea anyhow, so you just strain it, it takes it out easy. And it's really, really easy. It depends what kind of rose hips you have too. Some of them are easier to peel than others, but I just can't. How about you? Have you made rose hip jam?
We don't very often bring jam as we should.
Yes, she's not.
But I do it differently.
What do you do?
What I do is we would steam distilling, so that you have the steam coming up and it drips to the bottom, and that's what I use, and then I seal it.
If you're going to speak, please speak on the diaphragm. Thank you very much.
So what my Métis name is Labouche, because I wonder why it means about, because I have such a loud voice, and sometimes I'll repeat what Sharon says just so you can hear it. And she said she uses a steam distiller. You can get them for grapes. I think Lush Valley has one. They did have one. Okay. And for grapes and stuff, it's a steam distiller, and all the good runs down to the bottom, and then she uses that. Jean knows, unless someone borrowed it.
Yeah. Okay.
So I do that sometimes with grapes. Instead of canning them like usual and doing juice, I just put them in jars with a little bit of apple cider vinegar, same thing. Smash them up, and it takes all that goodness out of it, and then make juice that way. Because I don't like a lot of sugar either. Even though it's funny, I make all these jams.